Hello, folks. We have another edition of Free to Soar for you. And we have a wonderful guest, Bonnie, with us. And of course, Becky Vermeer is with us again as our expert. And
Hello.
yes, we have to get your Mrs. Doubtfire hello in there. It has to.
Hey, before we get too far into the program tonight,
Yeah.
I've been talking to you for a little while before we got started, and I'm noticing these earrings hanging off of your ears. What you got going on there tonight?
So Bonnie, I've got this thing with earrings, rings and earrings. So I saw these about a week or so ago, and at a distance I thought they looked like pizza. And I love pizza. And I thought, ooh, earrings that are pizzas, how cool. And then
They kind of do, though.
they do, don't
Yes.
they? So then I picked them up, and this red thing up here, it looks like an apple. And like where the stem would be is like two little fake diamond chips. But then the closer you look at it, it looks like a cherry pie, but these look like apples. So I don't know. I'm just gonna call them my pizza earrings, and they just make me laugh. They make me smile.
I love it.
With your tomato on top.
We're just gonna say that that's a
Yeah, it's
tomato,
a tomato.
and that's pizza. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm wearing tonight. I saw those and I thought, oh, I haven't worn those yet. I'm gonna wear them tonight. And
I love it.
Becky has her own fetish. What was yours?
Mine's socks. I have probably everything on a pair of socks that you can possibly imagine. And if I don't, I'm gonna buy it next time I see it. I kind of have this thing about socks. Yeah, I like my socks. And it doesn't matter to me if my socks match what I'm wearing. My socks are like a standalone. The outfit is the socks, and what I'm wearing otherwise doesn't matter. It's the socks.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
So I think she's either going to have to start picking up her foot and showing it to us, every night, every time we record, or you can just have a fresh pair that just came out of the laundry and you can just dangle them and show us your socks.
Oh, I could wear them on my ears like you do your earrings if you wanted me to.
You sure could.
Yeah.
You could. Yeah.
I don't know if people would take me seriously if I did that, though. Hard to say.
You could put a sock over.
Maybe,
Huh?
I don't know. Maybe not. I'm not sure how serious it would be to have I'm thinking how that would look.
It would look silly.
It would be funny.
Yeah. It would be funny.
Yeah.
It makes me think of a story. Do you care if I tell a really fast story?
I love your stories.
So when I was in college, I have one of the degrees that I have with my education is I have a religion degree. And so one of the classes that I participated in took place upstairs at the library on the college campus. The upstairs in the college library was always cold. And so we happened to be in class this one day, and it was really, really cold in the room. And so the professor that was teaching the class was bald. And he was in the process of educating us and telling us the topic for the day. And he reached into his pocket and pulled his handkerchief out, opened it up, and he put it on top of his head and just kept talking. Like he never stopped talking the whole time. And all of us in the class were like, what? How do we take him seriously? And so finally he was like, I'm sorry, my head was cold and I can't concentrate with my cold head. And we were like, we're supposed to take you seriously? Sitting there with a handkerchief on your head? Yeah, you just made me think of that. So I
That's
imagine
awesome.
people would have the same response probably if I had socks on my ears. So I guess I probably won't do that.
You should try it sometime.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It
I
may
might
not be,
surprise you.
yeah. I mean, it may not be distracting. It might just kind of fit right along with what you're saying.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you're being funny, it might just kind of, be an enhancement, like a costume to go with
Potentially.
it. Yeah.
We'll see.
Halloween's coming up.
What's that?
Halloween's coming up.
That's
Yep.
true.
Yep.
We have Halloween special.
And my dog has a lion, it's got the little ears and the mane and all that. And he looks like a lion when he puts it on. He hates it. He hates it. Absolutely hates it. He's figured out how to take it off.
Of course
Doesn't
he
like it at
has.
all.
That's
He's a smart
funny.
boy.
He is a smart boy. What'd you say, Bonnie?
So that's funny. I think my
Yeah.
dog would not be very happy with me either. She already hates it when I put shirts on her.
See,
Yeah.
I wanted to start putting shirts on my dog, and my son said, "Oh, Mom, please don't do that. He's so sensitive already as it is." He said, "Don't do that." He really is. If you laugh at him, he'll just kind of sulk over to me, and then he just buries his head like, "Mom, they're laughing at me."
Oh, how
Aw.
sweet.
He's got a
Poor
lot of
baby.
personality. Yeah. So I don't dare put shirts on him, but I would love to. I think that'd be fun.
There are some cute ones, but Zoe is not having it.
What kind of dog do you have?
She's a black lab.
Oh, I bet she's pretty.
Yeah, she's has some separation anxiety, so she follows me everywhere I go. She tries to push the shirt off. After a day or two, she'll let it alone and just grunt around.
My dog is a lab chow mix, and I think he's got hound and husky and yeah, some other breeds in there too, but he looks more like a lab.
They're
Yeah.
beautiful. They're my favorite.
Oh, aren't they? Their dispositions are wonderful. Yeah.
They're sweet.
Yeah. And people are they really respect them because of their size. They don't
Hmm.
know what they're going to do. So you've got good
Yeah,
protection there too.
yeah. She's very protective.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so Bonnie, we were wanting to hear your story tonight, and I'm going to let you just take off wherever you want to, start wherever
Okay.
you want, and just tell us what you want to tell us, what you're comfortable with.
So I'll start with where I'm at now and kind of work my way back. Because I would like to, I don't want to focus so much on what happened to me, and what was done to me. I want to focus on showing the process that I had to go through in order to recover from it. Um, I think that's kind of where I decided as I was like praying about it and thinking about like what do I want to do? And the message I would really like to get out is the recovery process. I mean, for everybody it's different, but for me, it being able to say what it was for me might be able to help somebody else out through that process.
That's fantastic because we haven't really super focused on that. That would be perfect. Go for it.
So I left my abuser in 2014, and I'm at the point now. So I go to Life Church in East Kansas City, and they did a Peace of Mind series that was 6 week series, 6 or 7 week series, um, focused purely on mental health. And it was awesome. So, and I work for a psychiatric hospital outpatient program. So it gave me the opportunity to kind of step into a lead role at church to help people talk about any of their trauma or get linked in with getting some help and getting some resources. So that was awesome. But it was the second to last service of the series, and it was trauma. And I was very nervous about this one. I knew it was going to be emotional, and I was kind of I didn't want to have that emotional reaction at church. So I was kind of emotional, and I go to church with my family, and my brother was with me when we heard the service, and like he was very supportive. And it was very emotional, but it was emotional in a way that I've never had my reaction be that way, in that type of emotion. It it was kind of like a light bulb went off on my head. Like I've come this far. Like it was just it was kind of like a very weird sensation feeling, I guess you could say. kind of hard to explain, but it was just kind of like a light bulb went off on my head. Was like, wow, I have come a long way because I'm not reacting out of a trigger or out of remembering what happened to me or anything like that. I'm actually feeling like I have hit a place of peace with it, if that makes any sense.
It does.
And his very last point of the service was we pursue purpose in our trauma. And before he said it, he's like, you might not be in a place to be able to understand this. You might even be mad at me for saying this because this is something that you might not be ready to hear or to process. And when he said it, it was kind of like a sigh of relief came to me because I was like, well, I need to find purpose. What's my purpose for my trauma? Mm-hmm. And I started talking with a few people. My godmother goes to church with us, and she is a therapist, and she's wanting to do some stuff within the church to help education on mental health and recovery and all of that stuff. And she's like, well, let's do it. We'll figure it out. Let's do it. So I met with our pastor and who's over our life groups, and he is actually 100% behind me. Now we're just starting to figure out the logistics, but I am going to start a domestic violence support group through my church.
That's fantastic.
I went to one already up north of the group that I went to, and I met the most amazing woman. Ruthie was great. She helped me in so many ways. And she's kind of helping mentor me now. So I've been going back to the group and just, she's giving me the resources, explaining to me how she was able to get her group started and giving me advice. And we haven't quite figured all of it out quite yet because I need to figure out how exactly to get the group out there without it being told what it is. Mm-hmm. For the safety of the women, not only because it's going to be open to anybody who does not come as well. It's going to be open to our church and to the community. And so that's what I have been working on, and that's what I've been really like praying about. And I guess I've always talked about it, and I've always thought, well, this would be great, but I was never in that place to do it. Mm-hmm. And I finally am in that place to do it. And it feels really great to be able to do it. And we're working on everything else as far as like the logistics of everything and when we'll be able to meet and everything like that. But yeah, so that's where I'm at now. That's where I have started with my finding purpose in my trauma.
That's fantastic. Especially because you're being able to do that in the church. Like that's fantastic. Because unfortunately, there are still times where churches aren't quite as open to letting us talk about the particular topic of domestic violence. So that's amazing. Mm-hmm. You made me think, if I can interject for just a second, when you said we're not quite sure what to call it. We do a support group at the Crisis Center. We've been doing it since we opened the doors. And our domestic violence support group is always on Tuesday nights. And we used to joke in the old days about what people would call it. We had one woman that came to our Tuesday night support group, and she called it Bridge Club. When people still played bridge. We were the book club for some other people. We were a Bible study for some other people. Like, people have called our support group lots of different names other than support group too. So I kind of chuckled to myself a little bit when you said that.
Yes. Yeah. I need to come up with a name for it. And she gave me a couple of suggestions on how to do it and where it's not known, like maybe putting something in the women's bathrooms, and making sure all the pastors are aware of the group so that they can refer by word of mouth if they have run into any situation. And my godmother and I have decided, she had talked to me about maybe figuring out going to the shelters that are in the area of where the church is located. And Ruthie had given me advice on what to, like, she has made some connections with prosecuting attorneys and some different resources that she has because she's been doing it for such a long time. So I'm really excited to see where that will go. So that's where my final point is where I'm going with my recovery and with working through all of it.
Very cool. Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a huge step. Yeah. That's exciting.
I'm really excited. I think it'll be great. It'll feel awesome to be able to help women who need it and need to be safe and need to have that security. And the understanding that it's the feeling that they feel of the isolation and the not feeling like anybody would understand, and the shame and the guilt is something that is very familiar to me. And it's anybody going through an abusive situation is going to feel that way.
Yeah. I've always thought that support groups are so fantastic. Well, in my experience, sorry I talk about the crisis center a lot because that's my place of reference for experience. But one of the cool things that I've seen, and I love support groups. I always look at support groups as the highlight of our program. And the reason I do that is because somebody could come into shelter today, still in that state of crisis, and come to support group and sit with somebody who's maybe 90 days into being at the crisis center and working on their healing journey, who's sitting with somebody who's been gone for 2 years, but still comes back to support group for the help in the education. And so, I always feel like the best support groups run themselves, because this person that just got here today really needs to hear what the person who left 2 years ago has to say. But then the person 2 years ago needs to listen to the new person to keep grounded, where they are in that process. So it's so fantastic.
Yes, I have met, that's part of the reason why that's kind of what saved me, actually, is having, I have a great support system at home. My family's amazing. And I was lucky enough to not go through it for more than 3.5 years. And I didn't grow up with, that kind of, I didn't grow up with that around me. So I didn't know. And going into the group, it helped me, because meeting the women who have, I don't want to say worse, because you can't really gauge someone's trauma, but their situations were far, far more different than mine. And meeting these women and just the encouragement was amazing to help me process what was happening to me, because yes, we had all heard of what PTSD is and everything else, but I'd never had anything really traumatic happen to me that I would have ever even thought that I had that. And that was kind of my journey into learning more about mental health in general. And it took me some years, but that's kind of what led me going into the psych world and being in the psych world. And I've been doing it for a year now, and I'm loving it. So it kind of steered my process and my healing process. And a lot of different relationships got mended because of what happened and what I went through, and having to work through that led for me to start working through other things, and didn't understand, because before that I never knew what anxiety and depression really were. We didn't really, it wasn't something that was known to me. But yeah, it really helped with that process. And dealing with a situation where I was abused physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually. And I just thought I thought it was my fault. And I didn't think anybody would understand.
Mhm.
And I have a daughter. She's not from that relationship, but um, she saw this person as her father figure because her dad wasn't there. And I was like, I'm, I can't take that away from her. You know, that was something that played in my head multiple times. He was an alcoholic. And so there was multiple times where I did want to leave because of the alcoholism. But I didn't want to take what I thought was stable life away from my daughter. And meeting some of the women who were dealing with different situations, but having to deal with kids was actually extremely helpful because I felt so guilty. The guilt and the shame that come behind trying to, the guilt and the shame of allowing it to happen,
Yeah.
and then the guilt and the shame of not leaving when you should have. And then you have the guilt and the shame because you have guilt and shame. And
Mhm.
then I had the guilt and the shame of putting my daughter through that situation. I mean, I protected her from the seeing it as much. She spent a lot of time with my mom, and she didn't see any of the violence, but she would see the fighting, and she would see the tension, and she knew that I had changed. I wasn't the same person. Um, and when she was 10 when I left, and ha- having to explain to her from a 10-year-old level was very difficult. And then she also went through the process of when she hit 13, 14, and 15, and where she started to look back and she understood. So then she had her own struggles with it, recovering from it. But I mean, we had a pretty open relationship when it came to talking about what had happened. So I hope that helped her enough. But it's not something, recovering from abuse is not something that you can do by yourself in a healthy way. You have to have that support group. You have to have that support system. And if you don't have a support system, you have to figure out how to make one.
Definitely.
And meeting some of those women who didn't have that support system really made me want to give that back in some way.
Yeah.
And teach women how to build their support system and to find the strength within them, because they've been dealing with somebody who's taken that strength away from them.
Yep.
And taken that power away from them, and then just to be able to restore that back into someone so that they have the power to live a healthy life is really what I would like to like be done.
Mhm.
Can I say something really briefly about guilt and shame?
Yes, please.
Because I heard you say carrying guilt and shame because you did this to her. I heard you. Are those the words that I heard you say?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a piece I really would like to address just for a second, because
Sure.
you were not the abuser in the relationship.
You're right.
So you entered your relationship with seemingly open eyes, thinking this person is someone who's saying they love me, who's someone who is expressing care, and I take people at face value, which
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us do. I mean, everybody that I've ever known has believed somebody who said they loved them. Everybody that I've ever known.
Yeah.
Some people say it and they mean it. Some people say it and not so much. But we don't know that when someone says those words to us. We don't know that that means secretly I'm an abuser and I'm going to use this against you. We don't know that. And so when you entered into that relationship, you entered into a loving, committed relationship in good faith. Unfortunately, the person you're in a relationship with really let you down
Mm-hmm.
and took that love and care that you were sharing and used it to hurt you. and you became the victim in this situation. And at that point, when you find yourself in that role where you're in that victim situation, you're like being held hostage in your own home. And so when it comes to that guilt and shame for saying, I did this to my daughter, you really didn't. What you showed your daughter is, I believe somebody who said they loved me, and I loved them back, and I wanted to build a relationship. And I thought it would be a good relationship with you, for you. And so I brought you alongside. Unfortunately, we were lied to. And so I would just strongly really hope that you can put yourself in the position where you didn't do that to your daughter. Your
Yes,
abuser
and
did
that's
that.
part of, you're right, and that's part of my recovery of,
Yes.
that's what I had to work through to know and to work through that, and being able to trust myself with my choices and, you know, future relationships. Like, that's part of the recovery that was probably the hardest. It was not easy. And I still kind of struggle with it in some ways. I still, you know, I think it's something I'm always going to have to like be very aware that that's one of my struggles and that's one of my triggers. But yes, you're right. That's what I had felt when I was going through my recovery
And it's
process.
100%
And now
legitimate. I'm not discounting it by any means. It's
yeah.
yeah.
Yes. And I just was not clear on, and that's something that me and my daughter have worked through with each other too. And getting to where we are now and where working through everything. It's trying to, I was, when I was thinking of things I wanted to talk about and say, it's kind of weird because looking back, it feels like such a lifetime ago. Like it doesn't, it's also kind of weird for me to even think and talk about without it bringing a panic to me. So I kind of, this is kind of a very awesome feeling, but very weird feeling, because usually I haven't been a part of the group I was going to since around when COVID stopped, and a little bit before COVID, and then so like it's just a kind of it's like an epiphany feeling, I guess, something like that.
I just had a conversation with somebody honestly last week, and we were talking about trauma. It's actually somebody that's working for me who had been going through some situations, hearing stories similar to what her situation had been, and it was affecting her. And so we had this conversation, and I was trying to help her process through that. And one of the things I said is, when you have such a deep-seated trauma, I honestly feel like we heal from the trauma, but I feel like we heal with a scab. I don't know that we necessarily heal with a scar, because it's so deep-seated and it's so painful and it's so inside of us that it doesn't take much to scratch that surface off the scab and then we bleed again. The goal is, I guess, to someday have the scar, but I feel like those deep traumas like that, they really are kind of scabs. And it's okay. I mean, it's just, it's the way that our body physically, mentally, emotionally handles it.
Yeah, and sometimes that scab doesn't get picked off and bleed as much.
Right.
Yeah. I know that there's always going to be certain triggers. I think that there's always going to be stuff I have to be aware of, and situations I have to be willing to know, do I want to risk putting myself in that situation to have that trigger? I just have been trying to learn the fine line of being too scared to try something because of it, or am I really making a healthy decision on, okay, I don't want to put myself in that position. And I think that's kind of been the more lingering part of my recovery and going through all of this. Like Ruthie always says, it's a process, and that process continues to go all the time. And I learned a lot from the other women that were a part of the group, and I learned a lot from my support group and my family support as well, and just being able to feel that love. And I want any woman who's going through a situation like that to be able to feel that love.
And that support's what makes all the difference in the world. I tell that to people all the time. If you've got one or two. If you got one or two people that are totally on your side that you can 100% be yourself with, and they love you and they support you through it, that's all you need. It's the people that don't have support that struggle the most. And so you're recognizing that and turning that into, I'm going to do this support group, because you're recognizing not everybody does have that support. But that's a game changer, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And one of the things that was the hardest for me to overcome was admitting to myself the real reason why I left. Because honestly, the real reason why I decided not to work it out is because he cheated. And he broke that trust with that. And because of that, that's the reason why I left. And unfortunately, it was really hard for me to admit that that was the reason why I left, and not because he almost killed me.
Yeah.
I felt so like there was something truly wrong with me, because and it's hard to explain to anybody. I mean, it's hard to explain to anybody that's the reason why, because they don't understand. But it's even harder to explain that to people who've never been put in the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So being a part of the group and being able to work through that and know that I'm not alone helped me in all of that.
Well, I'll say for the benefit of the people that are going to watch this interview, people don't understand that abusive relationships start as loving, committed relationships. You meet someone and you build a foundation, and it's a loving relationship. And then for whatever reason, because the person that we're in love with is an abuser, that changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. But just because today you wake up and you realize this person is abusive doesn't mean you stop loving them. And the average person on the street cannot understand that, because they've not been in that situation. Unless they've been in your shoes, they don't understand that.
I was one of those average people at one point, because I didn't grow up with this type of situation around me. I mean, I was, and when it became known to my family, my aunts and stuff, not my immediate family, but when it became known to others what happened, it was, well, I never thought anything like that would happen to you. You would never put up with that. And I know that they tried to be encouraging when they say that, because that's an honest way of trying to be encouraging. But when you're going through something like that, it's not always the easiest thing to hear.
It's putting the blame on you.
And it made me remember who I used to be, and it reminded me how far I had gone. And so that was I didn't understand that feeling until I started going through the process of, recovery. And that's kind of one of the things that I want needs to be educated. To me, society doesn't really educate people on how to deal with abusive situations, whether it's a domestic violence situation or, child abuse, or, there's so many different things. There's all the physical, mental, emotional, like there's no real healthy way, or nobody's really being taught the healthy way to react. Like there's so many people that are genuinely wanting to be helpful, but are they're trying to say the right things, but saying them in the wrong way. Right. And just being able to educate people on how to react to that. I mean, I'm still very much learning. I think I spoke with Rebecca about this before, when we spoke before, but I want to learn more and educate myself more, because what I've learned is based off of my own experience. And I want to be able to educate myself so that I can help educate others.
Right.
And just even in an everyday situation, like I mean, trust me, I don't want to be a teacher or anything, because I would never. You don't want me to do that. And like I tell my patients and stuff too, sometimes I'm like, you guys really don't always want me to be your therapist, but I will forever be your cheerleader and I will encourage you and all of that stuff. I'm the person for that. But being able to bring awareness to how to help and react and teach people how to do that as well, because the best of intentions could cause the most harm in some cases.
I could give you a two-sentence solution. Truthfully, two-sentence solution. What the public at large will say. Sentence number one. What did you do to cause him to hit you? Sentence number one.
Mhm.
That's what the public at large will say. If we change it to sentence number two, why does that person feel like it's okay to abuse you? We make a change. But the general mentality is, well, you must have done something. He wouldn't just hit you for no reason. So we turn around and we say to the victim, you must have done something. If we stopped
Right.
doing that and we turn around and we said to the abuser, why do you feel like it's okay to hit her? We would make a difference.
Mhm.
It's two sentences, but we just need to make that switch and it would change the way that people think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. I think that just the awareness of people's triggers
Mhm.
and understanding that the triggers, you could very well like not even mean to do it. I mean, I've been reacted by my triggers, and the person who did it it wasn't even directed at me. It had
Right.
nothing to do with me, but it was just that initial reaction, and I felt like I couldn't breathe.
Mhm.
So people being aware of those triggers, I mean, we talk 4th of July, people are always aware of, our military veterans and stuff like that. Well, then we need to make the triggers for abuse aware as well, the same. Like it
Absolutely.
needs to be known that is very, very much real.
Yeah.
I would say too, in my recovery and in the process I went through, it was the physical abuse was so easy to get past. Once the bruises healed, once the pain went away, the physical pain went away, it was like, okay, I'm okay. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm good. I'm fine. Like I can just go on with my life. I'm going to be the normal person. But it wasn't until after the mental and the whole abuse of the mental, emotional, and all of that stuff hit me, and I didn't even realize what was happening.
Mhm.
Like I felt like I was going crazy all over again. And sometimes when you think that you've gotten so far in your healing process, and then you realize, oh crap, there's some more I have to work through. Then it's like you get slammed. It's like you go 2 steps, you get slammed back 15. And it was really, it's really trying to see how do I want to put this. There's no handbook on how to recover from trauma.
Right.
No matter what the trauma is, there's no handbook, just like there's no handbook for parenting. Like there's no handbook to work through trauma or mental health or any of that. And when dealing with stuff like this and dealing with the psych world and mental health and abuse and trauma, it's so hard to even get people to realize because there's no physical proof of it. I mean, you have to look at people's behaviors. Yes, that's the physical proof, but you don't understand the behaviors and the reactions as to why people do things the way that they do, wondering why our brains tick and do things the way that they do. And so it's just hard. It's not an easy process. But I started this process as a victim, and I became a survivor. And I'm proud of that. And I'm really proud of what I went through. And I wish that I wish I had more education and I knew more about it before it happened. I wish it was something that was normally, as a society. Like, I wish that it wasn't just there wasn't this like stigma about talking about it. Now, do I want to go and like tell my deepest, darkest secrets? No. But I wish that there was more awareness of abuse and trauma and mental health in general. Just, I wish there was more. I wish therapy was a thing that everybody did from, I just wish there was more. Because any kind of a situation can be a traumatic experience for someone, especially kids. So I wish there was more awareness to it. And I wish I didn't have to learn it the hard way. But I'm glad I'm happy with where I am because of what happened to me. And because of I am who I am because of what happened to me. And I'm a stronger version of myself. So, and I've learned to embrace and love myself, even though that happened to me.